Alex and I just finished up trial against Allied Security Company for this double homicide in the parking lot of the Safeway complex in Rainier Beach. But the case originally started with this lawsuit involving a number of defendants, including Allied Security, Safeway, the Department of Juvenile Rehabilitation, which was responsible for parole supervision of the shooter, and then a liquor store, which was on site. And we were in trial against Allied Security and playing out everyone's role within this tragedy that happened that resulted in the 2 deaths. And it was literally all out there for the jury to consider. And that included not only Allied Security's phony marketing claims and what they actually did, but also Safeway's role and whether they budgeted enough money to provide proper security to protect people in its lot. And then also the role of the Department of Juvenile Rehabilitation in whether it properly monitored and supervised the parole supervision of the shooter. And of course, during the course of the lawsuit, we were proving that everybody did something wrong, right?
Yep, absolutely. And it was kind of an interesting dynamic in trial because we were almost going up against ourselves because the work and
damn, we were good, by the way.
Yeah, the work up on all the various entities who were involved in the case, it was compelling. And as we're sitting there in trial talking, the focus for us at that point was talking about Allied and their misleading of Safeway and the failure to provide security measures. That was one piece of the puzzle, and it was the piece we focused on. But Allied very reasonably was saying, "Hey, but look at the other pieces, jurors." And
not just doing that, they literally took Alex's script against a number of all these other defendants and used it against us verbatim.
And read it verbatim from the moment of opening statement. I even the transition words, it was wild to basically hear the prior briefing we'd written come out of defense counsel's mouth saying, "Yep, the state is responsible because blah 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 blah." It's just like,
the supervisor. But the result was ultimately great. The result was a $17 million settlement in toto. Wrongful death cases, by the way, are interesting because they've historically been the least valuable. If that it can't possibly make sense, but I'll explain it. They're the least valuable of the catastrophic injury cases. And the reason is what you get to recover for damages in a case like this. When you die, you don't have wage losses over 40 years. You don't have 24-hour supervision that you might have if you're paralyzed or something like that. You don't have a lot of those things. You just have the death. And of course, there's this sentiment among people who are thinking about what the damages are, saying, look, there's nothing you can do to bring that person back. So what are we giving money for? And in the case of Christopher Wilson, he had 6 children. And his estate was responsible for recovering damages for those 6 kids. And so that's what we work towards. But under the law, particularly under Washington's law, you can really only recover for a small bandwidth of damages. And in this case, that was
the 2.5 minutes of him lying on the ground in the parking lot after he'd been shot. His pain and suffering during that time.
And we only had the 2.5 minutes because of this manager at Safeway talking about how she could hear him struggling to breathe. It's interesting because when we did an animation of the graphics of the bullet and how the bullet killed him, and the bullet goes right through his chest and his heart. Yeah. And we had done this. We'd done this graphic of the ballistics, and I said, "Holy crap, we're not going to show that. It looks like he died immediately."
Died instantly. Yeah.
I want to show that.
The dispute between our forensic pathologist and their forensic pathologist was not a question of whether or not he suffered, because he did, but ours was saying, yeah, it was a couple minutes, and theirs was saying 5 to 10 seconds. He died instantly. And the moment LaWanda Horton took the stand and said, "Nope, I was out there minutes after the shooting. I'm hearing him struggle to breathe." At that moment that all credibility for the defense's expert is out the window. They're toast.
Right.
Our expert's going to look like they know what they're talking about, because they did.
But that was our platform for damages, was just talking about that, because we didn't have the significant employment history that we could talk about. It was pretty much just this, living, breathing human one moment who's shot multiple times right there on the site.